What if I told you that one comedian just turned a courtroom into the biggest stage Hollywood has ever seen? Not a movie set, not a scripted drama, but real life. And it played out so chaotically that people still aren't sure if it was performance or something much darker. For years, Katt Williams has been more than just a comedian. He's been the spark plug of chaos, a man who could turn a press conference into a brawl and a late-night appearance into a headline. Fans love him because he's unpredictable. Critics call him reckless. But everyone agrees, Katt Williams is the kind of figure who thrives on chaos like it's oxygen. This isn't someone who plays it safe, delivers a few polite jokes, and disappears. No, Katt has roasted industry titans, battled with security guards, and walked through scandals that would have ended anyone else's career. And somehow, every time, he came back with more momentum. But this time, this wasn't another viral clip or messy tabloid headline. This was a courtroom, a place where jokes don't land and chaos usually gets locked away. The day of his sentencing was supposed to be routine. Prosecutors came in ready to flex their evidence. Reporters showed up for sound bites and memes. Fans expected another wild quote to keep Twitter buzzing. But the tension inside that room was electric. The kind that makes your chest tighten even before anything happens. The gavel dropped. The sentence was read. And the reaction? Pure disbelief. Gasps rippled through the room. Phones flew up to record, and whispers turned into shouts. Some claimed a woman fainted in the back. Others said Katt's own family broke down right there in front of everyone. But through all that chaos, Katt didn't crumble. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he stared at the judge like he'd been waiting for this exact moment his entire life. And what came next? That's when everything flipped from courtroom drama to something that would shake Hollywood itself. The judge's words echoed through the courtroom like a funeral bell. Most people expected tears, maybe a breakdown, maybe even silence. But Katt Williams, he gave them none of that. Instead, he stood taller than anyone had ever seen him. His eyes locked on the bench. A half smile spread across his face. The kind of smile that told you he wasn't defeated. He was just getting started. And then, with the entire room holding its breath, he dropped words so sharp they cut through the silence like a blade. "You wanted my silence," he said, voice steady. "But today, I'm taking yours." For a split second, time froze. Then the room exploded. Fans screamed. Reporters scrambled to capture every word. Security rushed forward but hesitated, unsure if they'd just witnessed a meltdown or a revelation. The judge himself went pale, gripping the desk like he'd seen something he couldn't unsee. And just when it seemed like chaos couldn't climb higher, whispers spread. Katt had been slipped a folded note just moments before his outburst. Nobody knew who gave it to him. Nobody knew what it said. But whatever was on that paper, it flipped a switch inside him. Outside, the courthouse transformed into a battlefield of opinions. Protesters pressed against barricades, chanting Katt's name like he was a revolutionary. On Twitter, hashtags like "Katt killed the court" and "Justice or Setup" shot to the top within minutes. TikToks paired his words with dramatic slow-motion edits, painting him as the man who silenced the system. The media scrambled. CNN called it the most shocking courtroom moment in modern history. TMZ labeled him the convicted chaos king. But fans weren't buying the headlines. To them, Katt wasn't a criminal. He was a martyr. A truth-teller finally punished for saying what no one else dared. And the split was instant. Half the world believed he was guilty. The other half swore he had just exposed something far bigger. But that wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Because within hours, the internet caught fire with supposed leaks. The first? Rumors that the note Katt received contained names. Powerful names. Judges, politicians, industry elites. Names that had allegedly been tied to scandals whispered about for years. Then came a second wave. A blurry document popped up online claiming to be an FBI memo. The words were half redacted, but one phrase stood out. "Confidential informant compromised. Recommend neutralization." Was that about Katt? About the judge? Nobody knew. But the internet didn't wait for proof. And if that wasn't enough, an audio recording appeared online. A grainy clip, supposedly from inside a courthouse holding cell, with a voice sounding like Katt saying, "If I die in here, remember it wasn't my choice." Skeptics called it fake. Supporters swore it was real. But by then, truth didn't matter. What mattered was the story. And the story was unstoppable. And just when the fire seemed ready to burn out, something darker surfaced. By the next morning, this wasn't just about one comedian versus the system. It had spiraled into something far larger. Hollywood itself was suddenly under a microscope. Executives canceled meetings. Agents went dark. Celebrities who once laughed with Katt on stage began deleting old photos like they'd never known him at all. And then, the whispers turned into wildfire. Forums and conspiracy channels insisted the note passed to Katt wasn't just a random prop. According to them, it listed names, dates, and even references to something far more sinister. The so-called Red Room, a phrase Katt had teased for years in his stand-up routines. Back then, people laughed it off as one of his wild rants. But now, with those words resurfacing in a courtroom, it didn't feel like a joke anymore. While the internet spiraled into theories, Katt Williams himself went completely silent. No interviews, no statements, not even a social media post. For a man whose voice had always been his sharpest weapon, that silence hit harder than anything he could have said. And here's the thing. Silence can mean two very different things. To his critics, it was guilt. Proof that the show was finally over. But to his fans, it was strategy. The calm before the storm. They argued that Katt was waiting, watching, planning his next move. And when he came back, it wouldn't just be with words. It would be with something explosive. The judge, meanwhile, vanished from public view. Some reports claimed he collapsed from stress. Others swore he'd been whisked away to a safe house. A darker theory even suggested he never made it out of the courthouse at all. Nobody could prove anything, but the silence from the bench only deepened the mystery. Judges don't just disappear. Not like that. So here's where we're left. A comedian sentenced, a courtroom in chaos, a judge who vanished, and a note that may have exposed more than anyone wanted revealed. And the strangest part? It feels like this was just the opening act. Because if part 1 was the spark, and part 2 was the wildfire, then part 3 is the moment the flames start licking at the highest towers. Hollywood itself is now on trial in the court of public opinion, and the jury isn't even close to a verdict. The leaks aren't slowing down, the protests aren't cooling off, and Katt's silence? It's louder than any punchline he's ever delivered. So the question isn't just what happened in that courtroom. The real question is, what happens next? Because the biggest reveal hasn't even dropped yet.